The African peer review mechanism is a mutually agreed instrument voluntarily acceded to by the member states of the African Union as a self-monitoring mechanism. It was founded in 2003. The mandate of the APRM is to encourage conformity in regard to political, economic and corporate governance values, codes and standards among African countries and the objectives in socio-economic development within the new Partnership for Africa's Development. Origins of APRM. The 37th Summit of the Organization of African Unity held in July 2001 in Lusaka, Zambia, adopted a document setting out a new vision for the revival and development of Africa, which was to become known as the New Partnership for Africa's Development. In July 2002, the Durban Summit supplemented NEPAD with a declaration on democracy, political, economic and corporate governance. According to the declaration, states participating in NEPAD believe in just, honest, transparent, accountable and participatory government and probity in public life. Accordingly, they undertake to work with renewed determination to enforce, among other things, the rule of law, the equality of all citizens before the law, individual and collective freedoms, the right to participate in free, credible and democratic political processes, and adherence to the separation of powers, including protection for the independence of the judiciary and the effectiveness of parliaments. The Declaration on Democracy, Political, Economic and Corporate Governance also committed participating states to establish an African peer review mechanism to promote adherence to and fulfillment of its commitments. The Durban Summit adopted a document setting out the stages of peer review and the principles by which the APRM should operate. In March 2003, the NEPAD Heads of State and Government Implementation Committee, meeting in Abuja, Nigeria, adopted a Memorandum of Understanding on the APRM. This MOU effectively operates as a treaty. It came into effect immediately with the agreement of 6 countries to be subject to its terms. Those countries that do not accede to the document are not subject to review. The March 2003 meeting also adopted a set of objectives, standards, criteria and indicators for the APRM. The meeting agreed to the establishment of a secretariat for the APRM and the appointment of a 7-person panel of eminent persons to oversee the conduct of the APRM process and ensure its integrity. Participation. The APRM is a voluntary mechanism open to any country. A country formally joins the APRM upon depositing the signed Memorandum of Understanding of March 9, 2003 at the NEPAD Secretariat. As of early 2012, 33 countries had formally joined the APRM by signing the MOU on the APRM. Algeria, Republic of Congo, Ethiopia, Ghana, Kenya, Mozambique, Nigeria, Rwanda, South Africa and Uganda signed the MOU in March 2003, Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Gabon, Mali and Senegal in April and May 2003, Mauritius in July 2003, Egypt and Benin in March 2004, Angola, Lesotho, Malawi, Sierra Leone and Tanzania in July 2004, Sudan and Zambia in January 2006, São Tomé and Príncipe in January 2007, Djibouti in July 2007, Mauritania in January 2008, Togo in July 2008, Cape Verde in 2009, Liberia in January 2011, and Equatorial Guinea in July 2011. In January 2012, Professor Mohamed Sayer Babes, the outgoing chairman of the panel of eminent persons, announced the expected accession of Niger and Guinea, which brings the total number of states to 33. Review. The APRM process is based on a self-assessment questionnaire developed by the APR Secretariat. It is divided into 4 sections: democracy and political governance, economic governance and management, corporate governance, and socio-economic development. Its questions are designed to assess states' compliance with a wide range of African and international human rights treaties and standards. The questionnaire was formally adopted in February 2004, in Kigali, Rwanda, by the first meeting of the APR Forum, made up of representatives of the heads of state or government of all states participating in the APRM. Before the questionnaire was adopted and after the initial plans for the APRM were laid down by South Africa and others, some press reports stated that, after pressure from other African countries like Nigeria and Libya, Thabo Mbeki changed his mind and did not want political governance to be included within the APRM reviews. According to the reports, Mbeki believed that review of political governance was something for the African Union. Jean Chrétien, then president of the G8, sent a letter to Mbeki demanding clarifications and expressing his concern that these organs are politicized, and will therefore not produce credible reviews. In a public letter, Mbeki denied the charges and stated that countries would voluntarily subject themselves to review of all aspects of good governance, including political, under the APRM, but that other institutions might be more appropriate to deal with some issues. Types of review as originally envisaged in the APRM-based document adopted at the Durban Summit in 2002, there are 4 types of review. 1. Base review. This is carried out within 18 months of a country becoming member of the APRM. 2. Periodic review. Every 2 to 4 years. 3. Requested review. Any country can request an additional review for its own reasons. 4. Crisis review. Early signs of impending political or economic crisis would also be sufficient cause to institute a review. However, in practice, it seems likely that only base reviews will be conducted for the foreseeable future. The review process for the first 4 countries, Ghana, Kenya, Mauritius and Rwanda, has taken at least 18 months and perhaps up to 3 years or more, since they were first announced in Kigali in February 2004. APRM structures. APR Forum. This is the committee of the heads of state and government of the countries voluntarily participating in the APRM. It is the highest decision-making body and could be considered like the board of directors, which has the final say over the whole process. They appoint the APR panel, look after the funding, discuss the country reports, apply the peer pressure and transmit the reports to the relevant structures. APR panel. This can be considered as the management or the executive of the APRM that directs and manages its operations. They are appointed to oversee the review process, to ensure the integrity of the process, to consider review reports and to make recommendations to the APR Forum, according to the base document, and repeated in the Organization and Processes document. Its precise mission and duties, however, are supposed to be outlined in a charter, which will also spell out reporting arrangements to the APR Forum. However, more than 3 years after the installation of the panel, this charter has still not been written. The panel consists of 7 eminent persons of high moral stature and demonstrated commitment to the ideals of Pan-Africanism, who, moreover, have expertise in the areas of political governance, macroeconomic management, public financial management and corporate governance. Its composition should also reflect a regional, gender and cultural balance. The panel members are nominated by the participating countries, shortlisted by a committee of ministers, appointed by the APR Forum and serve for up to 4 years. Each country to be reviewed is assigned to one of the 7 eminent persons, who consider and review reports, and make recommendations to the APR Forum. As of July 2006, the 7 eminent persons were Marie-Angelique Savani, Chairperson, Adebayo DDG, Bethuel Kiplagat, Graca Machel, Mohammed Babes, Dorothy L. Juma, and Chris Stals. On 30 January 2012, former Deputy President of South Africa, Baleka Mbete, was elected at the 16th Summit of the Committee of Participating Heads of State and Government of the African Peer Review Mechanism to sit on the panel of eminent persons. She is the only sitting representative of a Southern African country, and will join panel members Barrister Julian Onziel Nalenga, Barrister Akati Muna, Ambassador Professor Okanedit Uy, Ambassador Ashraf Gamal, Dr. Mekidesh Mustafa, Ambassador Fatuma Endangizanaya Ekobwa, and the panel's newly elected chairperson, Professor Amos Sawyer. Following a decision to increase the size of the body, the APR Forum intends to elect a ninth panel member at the 17th Summit in June 2012. APR Secretariat. The Secretariat provides the secretarial, technical, coordinating and administrative support services for the APRM. It is supervised directly by the chairperson of the APR panel at the policy level and in the day-to-day management and administration by an executive officer. The Secretariat is based in Midrand, South Africa, not far from the NEPAD Secretariat. APR Country Review Team. They are appointed by the APR panel, one of whose members heads the team, and are constituted only for the period of the country review visit. Their composition is carefully designed to enable an integrated, balanced, technically competent and professional assessment of the reviewed country. APR Focal Point. This is a national mechanism set up by a participating country in order to play a communication and coordination role. It should serve, as Aisha Kaji puts it, as the liaison between national structures and continental ones such as the APR Secretariat and the APR panel. It should also, in conjunction with the national coordinating mechanism, develop, coordinate and implement the in-country mechanisms of preparing for peer review and hosting the country review team during the review visit. The precise form of the focal point is left to the country's discretion, but according to the APR Forum, it should be at ministerial level or a high-level official reporting directly to the head of state or government and with access to all national stakeholders. National coordinating structure, or here the actual implementation of the APRM at the national level happens. The country's self-assessment happens here by conducting, as the MOU mandates, broad-based and all-inclusive consultation of key stakeholders in the public and private sectors. In addition, together with the focal point, it should develop, coordinate and implement the in-country mechanisms of preparing for peer review and hosting the country review team during the review visit. As with the focal point, countries have of discretion as to how this is implemented. Review process. Preliminary phase or support mission. The country support mission primary purpose is to ensure a common understanding of the philosophy, rules and processes of the APRM, and to help countries who need support with aspects of the national processes. The guidelines further specify what the latter might mean, namely help with institutional and organizational arrangements for involving major stakeholders in the review process, with the development of a realistic program of action and with expertise not readily available in the country. In order to do this, they will meet with the authorities in the country responsible for the APR process and with representatives of all the major stakeholders. Stage 1. The first stage is preparatory for both the APR Secretariat and the national authorities. The country in question has to answer a detailed questionnaire, on the basis of which a self-assessment is completed. The APRM Secretariat, for its part, will make a background study of the country's governance and development. After this has been shared with the country concerned and other partner institutions, and after the self-assessment has been made, the country in question will issue a draft program of action. In the development of this program, that participation of all stakeholders must be ensured, including trade unions, women, youth, civil society, private sector, rural communities and professional associations. In the program, it will suggest a time-bound framework for implementing the Declaration on Democracy, Political, Economic and Corporate Governance. After the program of action and questionnaire have been submitted to the APR Secretariat, the Secretariat will draw up an issues paper. It is possible that on the basis of this paper the Secretariat will decide that certain issues need a more in-depth assessment before that stage 2 is initiated. If there are technical assessments, these can lead to the update of the issues paper and possibly the program of action. The APRM Secretariat also makes a suggestion to the APR panel regarding the composition of the country review team. Stage 2. In the second stage, the review team will visit the country and carry out the widest possible range of consultations with the government officials, political parties, parliamentarians and representatives of civil society organizations. Stage 3. In the third stage, the draft report is compiled. This report is based on the findings of the review team during their visit, the background research the APR Secretariat has made and on the issues paper compiled by the APR Secretariat. The draft is then discussed with the government concerned. These discussions are meant to ensure the accuracy of the report and to provide the government with an opportunity both to react to the APR team's findings and to put forward its own views on how the identified shortcomings may be addressed. The report is supposed to evaluate a country's performance by taking into account the commitments made in the draft program of action. It will also state what the remaining weaknesses are and recommend further action for the final program of action. Stage 4. The review team's report and the final program of action compiled by the government is sent to the APR Secretariat and the APR panel. Then the report is submitted to the APR Forum of participating heads of state and government for consideration and formulation of actions deemed necessary. It is at this stage that the actual peer pressure is applied if necessary. Here the full quotation of the APRM-based document is in its place. If the government of the country in question shows a demonstrable will to rectify the identified shortcomings, then it will be incumbent upon participating governments to provide what assistance they can, as well as to urge donor governments and agencies also to come to the assistance of the country reviewed. However, if the necessary political will is not forthcoming from the government, the participating states should first do everything practicable to engage it in constructive dialogue, offering in the process technical and other appropriate assistance. If dialogue proves unavailing, the participating heads of state and government may wish to put the government on notice of their collective intention to proceed with appropriate measures by a given date. The interval should concentrate the mind of the government and provide a further opportunity for addressing the identified shortcomings under a process of constructive dialogue. All considered, such measures should always be utilized as a last resort. Stage 5. According to paragraph 25 of the base documents, the report should be formally and publicly tabled in key regional and sub-regional structures such as the Pan-African Parliament, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, the Peace and Security Council, inaugurated in May 2004, and the Economic, Social and Cultural Council of the African Union. This is when the report will be publicly available. After the review, a country is then supposed to implement its program of action. Implicit in the whole APRM formula is that foreign donors would kick in here and bear some, if not a large part, of the cost connected to the implementation of this plan of action that is supposed to improve the identified shortcomings in governance. After this base review is concluded, a periodic review should follow every 2 to 4 years. Funding. The APRM is primarily funded by contributions from participating countries, and funds from development partners, such as Canada, the United Kingdom and the UNDP. The APRM reported contributions of some $17.3 million in 2007, with $10.5 million coming from development partners. Many member states failed to meet the minimum contribution of $100,000. Bibliography. APRM documents. APRM base documents. The APRM base document Memorandum of Understanding on the APRM. The Memorandum of Understanding guidelines for countries to prepare for and participate in the APRM. Organization and processes. The objectives, standards, criteria and indicators for the APRM accessed on May 27, 2006. Critiques and studies of the APRM process and analysis of the implementation of the African peer review mechanism in Ghana, Kenya and Mauritius. Grant Masterson, ASA, February 2005. NEPAD's APRM. A Progress Report, Practical Limitations and Challenges. Paper by Aisha Kaji on the APRM 2004, accessed on May 27, 2006. Becoming My Brother's Keeper Africa, October 2003 by Ross Herbert, accessed on May 27, 2006. The APRM Process in Kenya, A Pathway to a New State. Report by OSIEA, AfriMap, April 2007. Critical Review of the African Peer Review Mechanism Process in Rwanda. Report by Ligue des Droits de la Personne dans la Région des Grands Lacs. January 2007. Between Hope and Skepticism. Civil Society and the African Peer Review Mechanism Partnership, Africa-Canada, October 2005. Strategies for Promoting Effective Stakeholder Participation in the African Peer Review Mechanism, UNECA, 2005. Inadequately self-critical. Rwanda's Self-Assessment for the African Peer Review Mechanism. Edouard Jourdan, African Affairs, April 2006. Effective stakeholder participation in the APRM process for the promotion of democratic governance. A Case Study of Ghana. Eric Opoku, UNDP, December 2006. Ghana and the APRM. A Critical Assessment. Adoti Bing Papo, AfriMap and OSIWA, June 2007. The African Peer Review Mechanism in Mauritius. Lessons from Phase 1. Sheila Bunware, AfriMap and OSISA, August 2007. Further analysis of the African Peer Review Mechanism and the ECA, OECD DAC Mutual Review of Development Effectiveness in the context of NEPAD report to the UN High-Level Task Force on the Implementation of the Right to Development, January 2008. The African Peer Review Mechanism. Lessons from the Pioneers. Ross Herbert and Stephen Grust, South African Institute of International Affairs, March 2008. Civil Society Participation in Uganda's APRM Process. Juliet Nakito, ODOI, SAIIA, June 2008. Assessing South Africa's APRM, an NGO Perspective. Nick Hutchings, Mikelani Dimba, and Alison Tilley, SAIIA, June 2008. Addressing the African Peer Review Mechanism's Programs of Action. Fatanagard, SAIIA, June 2008. Understanding APRM Research, Planning, Process and Politics. A Practical Handbook for Peer Review Research. George Katito, SAIIA, June 2008. The African Peer Review Process in Nigeria. Adele Jinadu, AfriMap, August 2008. Benin and the African Peer Review Mechanism. Consolidating Democratic Achievements. Giles Bidet, AfriMap, August 2008. Making the News. Why the APRM Didn't. Brendan Boyle, SAIIA, September 2008. Media Freedom, Transparency and Governance. Raymond LOUW, SAIIA, September 2008.